a guest. We're going to have a guest presenter in this one as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, that'll be nice.
That's exciting.
It is. You're so sweet.
So how's everything going where you're at?
I am in the Phoenix area. And is that where you're located, or are you somewhere else in the world?
I'm actually in Mississippi.
Oh, okay. Well,
yes, ma'am. I'm originally from Tucson, Arizona.
Oh, okay. And how long have you been living there in Mississippi?
Oh, for a while, since 2001.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I've only been here in Arizona for 5 years now.
Oh,
and
where are you originally from?
I moved here from I had been in Wisconsin before here, and then before that I was in the Washington D.C. area. But it's taken some getting used to coming here.
Oh yes, yes.
But
that's how I felt when I moved to Mississippi.
Oh, I bet. Sure.
Yeah.
Whenever
Very big difference.
Sure. And it's all the elements that are different, right? The weather's different. The landscape is different. The culture is different, right? That's a lot to learn and get accustomed to.
Yes, it took a while to get accustomed to, but I love it. I love the South now, but when I first got here, I was like, oh no.
Oh, really?
There's nobody, everything's so far away. They're building more stuff, but everything is so far away. I'm used to Arizona where I can just go outside, go to a corner store. Now it's like, oh, we have to get in the car to go everywhere.
Oh. Wow.
But the weather is definitely very, very different. Here we get all 4 seasons.
Sure. It is. It took some, I tell folks in Wisconsin that I think I'm all Arizona-fied now. And I finally am able to deal with the, like right now it's like 111, 12, 13, 14 this whole week. And yeah, but I'm accustomed to it now. And I mean, I'm not going anywhere during that time. I'm not doing things outside or anything, but it took a lot. It really took some getting used to.
Oh yeah. I went to visit Arizona probably about 2 years ago, and I was like culture shocked. Like, wow,
really?
It's so different. Even from I haven't been there in so long. When I went, I was like, oh my God, me, my husband, and my son. When we came back, all 3 of us were sick.
Oh, really?
As soon as we made it back, yep.
Wow.
The climate change has tore us all up. Here is humidity, so hot, but it's humid, very, very humid, actually. I would prefer dry heat.
Well, I had lived in the Washington, D.C. area for over 20 years, and all summer the weather forecasters on the radio would say, we got the 3 H's again today, hazy, hot, and humid, right? It would be in the mid 90s every day, and it would be really hazy out and really humid. Like the humidity was super high. But I was used to that. Oh. But you said your family got sick when you went back to Arizona?
Yes, ma'am. We went there and then we hung out, and on our way, we got back. As soon as we got back in Mississippi, got off the plane, everybody was like sick, like allergies. You know, I thought from the climate change, because it's so different. Like the air smells different. That's weird, but it's like everything is so different.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
Even here, you know, I mean, I tell everybody, ask me all the time, are you going to ever move back? I'm like, no. I love the South. I love the green. I love the trees. I love, you know, it's just the feeling. Although I do miss Arizona, but I do love the South feeling.
That's great. Well, I just realized that moving from Wisconsin, it was, you know, in Wisconsin you have December. Sometimes it can be, or it can start in November, but you got December, January, February, March, April. You got like five or 6 months out of the year where, unless you're, you know, a real, I don't know, like you go cross country skiing and snowshoeing and all these kinds of activities, you're not doing anything outside because the weather doesn't allow that, right? You're stuck indoors, and it gets dark real early, and you're just indoors all the time for about 5 months. So I realized living here in Arizona, it's the exact same thing except flipped with the months, right? Instead of in the winter months, it's in the summer months, where you're just indoors. And if you do ever go anywhere, you park as close to the building as possible, and you practically run from the car into the building. So instead of getting out of the cold, you're getting out of the heat, right? So basically, I just traded cold for hot.
Oh, yeah. So, my dad, he's actually from Wisconsin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have a lot of family from Wisconsin. They say the same thing. Like, it's just too cold. You know, we get cold. We get pretty cold in Mississippi as well, but we don't get snow like that. You'll see the seasons. That's one thing I do like. The trees, right. You see them change colors. Oh, that's what I love the most. Is like you see the seasons. They might be fast, but you see them.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, so how's the course going for you? Do you have other courses you're taking right now at this time, or is this the only one?
Oh, I do. I'm taking organizational leadership as well as this course.
Oh, okay. So that's like 200, OGL 200?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So far it's pretty, at first project management, I never done it, so it was new. So, but the more and more I do it, the more I understand it. So for the most part, it's been pretty good. I'm off of work. I work at a university, the University of Ole Miss, so we've been off since spring break.
Oh, okay. And what do you do there?
I'm a supervisor at the student union. We have like a little place called McAllister's. I doubt if Arizona has one, because it's out of like the South. And I'm a supervisor at McAllister's.
Is that McAllister's? Is that a cafe?
It's a deli.
Yeah, we have that here.
Oh, they have one here? I'm shocked. I am surprised.
Yeah, they have really wonderful iced tea, and they have baked potatoes, right? Baked potatoes and all great sandwiches and salads, and they have these giant Rice Krispie treats and great big cookies. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah,
we have one of those.
Supervisor there. I'm supervisor at the student union on Ole Miss campus there, so we're excited or we're a little worried about how work is going to go, because we are going to at least try it. They do want to at least try to see how it's going to work out, so we'll see.
Yeah, we all.
It's going to be very interesting.
Hi, Amy.
So they still don't have anything set up, like as far as social distancing in the student union. So that's one of the troubles that they're going to have.
Yes, absolutely. Wow, that's going to be challenging. And now Amy is
Yeah.
joining us. Hi, Amy.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
At first, when your video was first coming up, I thought you were on an airplane. I was like, she's not on an airplane. That can't be what that is. But it was your sofa behind you, right? Like there's the two panels, and then you have those windows back there, right? Yeah. And I was like, where is she? Now I understand. Because you know, it's you're only this big, right? You're just tiny. We were just chatting a little bit about weather and universities trying to open back up and allow students on campus and all sorts of challenges that are coming up soon.
Do they have a plan there?
ASU has a plan, yes, and they have, you know, they probably have like plan A, B, C, D, E, right? It all probably goes all the way to Z, right? Depending on all sorts of different things that happen, right? Because we're one of the states, I haven't checked the latest numbers, but we're one of the states where the growing cases of the coronavirus are really high, and it's very worrying for a lot of people. So there's the option for, even for students who are face-to-face students, they can still do their classes remotely. So they have the option, they can do that. Yeah. But I think for students like you all who are online students from the start, that's there, you know, there's not going to be any, well, do we go or do we stay? Should I go or should I stay? Oh, we should play that song, right? I don't know. You're probably too young. Should I go or should I stay? Right?
No, I know that one.
Okay. Should I go or should I go? Should I go to class? Should I stay? Should I go to class? Should I stay? But yeah, I think they're going to manage it well. They're tracking all the data points to make sure they can set up arrangements for students to remain safe. Because that's the primary focus,
right?
For everybody to stay healthy and stay safe. So, all right, James is joining.
Hello, hello.
Hi, James.
See if you guys can see me. How are you guys?
Good.
Good, good.
I gotta check, where's my clock? I have 3 screens with this setup. I have 3 screens, and so, and then I've got my PowerPoint, and then the Zoom. You know, and Zoom gives you, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Zoom gives you like 5 screens, right?
Right.
And so it's always, it's like a little scavenger hunt to find out where is the component that I'm looking for. Oh, we were just chatting about the weather and plans that universities are making to whether they're going to open up and allow students back on campus or not. Like I think I heard all of the UC and the so the UC system, that's University of California, and then there's two groups of state universities in California. There's the UC system, and then the other one, which is like Cal State and those others. But I heard both of them they made a decision quite some time ago to just stay closed and do everything remotely.
Virtually, yeah.
Arizona's we have a plan to go live and allow students back on campus. So some people are really excited about that. Some of the people that I work with are really excited about that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, several months being away. It sounded good in the beginning, but the reality of it is a little bit different. and people begin to miss that person-to-person interaction and those sorts of things.
I guess.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah.
So this is being recorded and we're right at 3 o'clock. I'm going to give it just a couple of more minutes. And James and I, we're chatting. James is our special guest today. James is he's in our graduate program, our organizational leadership master's program. And he's our guest today. And
Yes.
We were chatting a little bit earlier and I was saying, we never know how many students are going to join the live session. Sometimes there's a lot and sometimes there's a little, there's few, and it all depends on, what is going on in everybody else's calendars. But no matter, even if there's only a few students participating in the live discussion, we're still going to cover all of the important points because the reason I record this is I record it and then the students know this already. I take that recording and I turn it into a video quiz that is then an assignment inside the class. So even all the students will see this, even if they aren't participating in the live part of it. So.
Yeah, I think I remember the video you used. It was was it a young lady who worked at ASU for when I took this class in fall last year?
Did we have a guest?
No, so I know it was built into one of the modules, and I think you had pre-recorded it already with the young lady. Yeah, you and her had sat down, from what I remember.
Right. Excellent. Hi, Kylie.
Hi, how is everybody?
Doing well, thank you.
I want to open this up so I can see your background a little better. Oh, it's kind of like looking up into the trees. I see.
Yes. I meet with a lot of teachers, so I needed like an ASU branded
Right.
template so they know where I'm from.
I like that. At first, it didn't look like that. It looked like something else.
That's fair.
It actually, I'll tell you what it looked like. It looked like, I mean, I could tell it was like something grassy and plant-like, but I couldn't tell that it was looking up into them. It's a really interesting view, right? It was as if somebody was lying on the ground taking a photograph up into the air.
Yes.
It's a really interesting vantage point.
I would have loved to have seen that photographer.
Yes, yes. Ah. Okay. Oh, Tori has joined. Great. Tori, you were on the first call as well, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for joining. Let's give it just one more minute, shall we? In case some others are joining. I don't know. One of the things we were talking about is the trying to connect with Zoom, or I'm sure all of you are using other kinds of online meeting platforms as well. But sometimes you think it's just going to be a one-click connection process, and it's not, right? Tells you to download some software. Then the software that you downloaded, you have to run it. And when you try to run it, it tells you have to update something else, but you can't update that without closing everything. And it ends up taking you 7 minutes instead of 30 seconds, right?
Right.
And that doesn't seem like 7 minutes should be really that much time, right? But when you only allocated 30 seconds for it and you were expecting to be able to join right away, and that can be really frustrating and annoying when those things happen. And I'm sure we've all been through that a lot in the last few months. All right. Well, I'm gonna thank James for agreeing to be our guest speaker, and I'm going to see if I heard and make James the host. So, thought I just did that by clicking this. Oh, here we go. Make host. Oh no, I should do the co-host so you don't have to give it back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make co-host. There we go. And then, because James has some slides to share with us. So now, James, you're the co-host and you should be able to, I'll stop sharing and then you should be able to share.
All righty. Let's see if we can get this here. Check that.
So James has agreed to be our guest speaker today. James was in my OGL 320 class a while ago now, and currently James is in the Organizational Leadership Masters program that we offer. And so I reached out and asked him if he'd be willing to be a guest speaker in this class, and he was very gracious and he said he would.
Absolutely, yeah. So it was last fall, I think fall A, when I had this course last year, and you know, kind of dove deeply into the beginning world of project management. I did have project management experience in prior leadership roles that I had, but I had never really taken the time to you know, lay it out in kind of the format. And use some of the dialogue that I learned that we use, because as Dr. Chandler expressed in the beginning of that course, you know, some of the words sound the same, but they're a little bit different when you know, apply them to project management. So learn some of those things. And I kind of, from that, I began to build some of my project plans a little bit more in-depthly when needed for some of our bigger clients, but to kind of set all this up. So currently I'm a senior partner at a consulting firm here in Phoenix, Arizona. And we deal with projects of all scope sizes. We've done stuff with the Secret Service and the White House. I've done stuff with the Super Bowl. One of the newest projects that we're working on is helping a sovereign nation to get off the ground. And so if you want to talk about managing a project,
Wow.
that's a heck of a project to manage, right? So I have no idea about any of that stuff. The client we're working with is very knowledgeable in the activity. Again, he just kind of needed a team and some support to help, you know, put that together. So
James, can I I
Yeah.
apologize for interrupting.
Yeah.
The screen you're sharing is like your view, the presenter view, not the, like, because we could.
You want to go to, let's see, does that work? I know there was something that
There you go.
Does
Yes.
that work? Okay.
No, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, no worries. So yeah, when it comes to projects, I'm responsible on a daily basis to not only manage my personal life projects. That was kind of one of the things that Dr. Chandler told us in the beginning, that you already manage projects everywhere in life, all right? Whether you have kids or your family or just your day-to-day life operations, you know, you're always managing a project. And so for me, as senior partner, I'm managing various projects throughout the day, again, outside of my personal projects. I'm looking at what we're doing at the firm and helping to carry out our project plans that we have in place, you know, as far as growth and gaining new clients and all of those sorts of things. And then on the, you know, a level beneath that, all our clients lie there. As I said, we have clients in all different industries, also veteran advocacy. We do a lot of work with nonprofits, some legislative work. We're currently advising for a campaign for mayor for the city of Phoenix. So we're a little bit of everywhere. So managing projects, I say all that to say managing projects is super important because I can, you know, have my mindset on one project, and then you get a phone call and now I have to shift into a completely different project. So having a project plan that I can, you know, refer back to and reflect upon to understand what this client is asking me and you know, the best advice I can give to proceed is super duper important. So I'm not a project management expert by any means. I don't want to say that. Just been fortunate enough to have a lot of experience in a lot of different industries and fields. So through this PowerPoint, again, I'm going to just try to go through this just to kind of set a foundation. I'll just talk a little bit about how these things pop up in my daily life. And then I always like to leave more time for Q&A, because I can then better answer your questions and address the things that you guys want to talk about and that Dr. Chandler wants to talk about. So in the beginning, as we talk project management, you know, it's kind of comprised of just general management things. There are some things that are universal. You know, when you're putting together a project management plan, you know, things such as scope, analyzing risk, you know, timeline, all of those things are important. And something else is super important, especially, you know, my industry is understanding the industry of the client. All right. And so we are quality over quantity firm. We will turn clients away if, you know, if it's something that we don't think that we would be able to help them with, or something that would impede on our process and procedures. We don't like overbooking ourselves just for the sake of generating capital. So, you know, looking into an industry, actually, we just had we had a gentleman that we were talking to who had a nonprofit organization, and working with him was great. You know, he said, these are the things that I need, and this is what I want to do. This is the industry. We had some familiarity there, but then he brought in some of his people who actually did the business there, and we couldn't really get on the same page. So that was a project that we winded up having to pass on. So understanding the industry and understanding my capabilities and our firm's capabilities and our reach is super important as before we even get into the, you know, putting together a project management plan. And usually for us, we usually put together a strategic plan, and then from that strategic plan, we go into project plan, and then from there into our execution. Again, as we put together those plans, time is super important. Time is kind of directly correlated to the scope and the cost. And a lot of times, you know, we work with a lot of small businesses who, and this is even prior to COVID, you know, they may not have had a lot of resources and a lot of capital, but the scope of their project in their minds is huge, right? So like, we want to do all of these things, but they don't have the cost. They have no idea, you know, the time that it really takes to do that. And so, you know, even before we get into any strategy or any project planning, we take the time to really talk through and say, do you understand what you're asking here? And this is what this really looks like. And if we were to, you know, put together a project plan, you know, this is something that you want in 60 days, but the reality, this is like a 6-month project. And so just kind of laying those things out in the beginning are super important, and it can save both yourself and your client, you know, a lot of time, as opposed to just jumping into it and then realizing all these things, you know, as you're midway through the project. Project cycle, again, as I've been kind of stating here, defining the project is super important in the beginning, and you know, reassuring the client that you understand you know, what the project calls for, which then once you kind of have it defined, and you can kind of jump into the planning process, and then the execution, and then of course last reviewing. Knowing the why is super important, and the goals of the of our clients. So, you know, we go through and say, you know, we have a client who just recently opened a restaurant in Phoenix maybe 2 months ago, and this individual was looking to expand to another location. So he came to us and said, you know, what do you think about this? And what I told him was, I'm like, you just got started. You're in a new marketplace. You're still having trouble executing on the plan that we put together already for you. Like, you know, you have so much going on with this first location. Added on a second location, it adds another layer of difficulty, which requires another project plan. And if you can't balance one project plan, it's going to be super difficult to balance 2 project plans. So again, understanding that, we're just reiterating the scope, you know, the skills that are needed for us. We have a series of preferred partners that we work with. So if we have outsourced, if we do have to outsource to say legal or accounting or marketing, we have a series of people that we work with who we already have a relationship with and understand how we work. And so we know their skill sets very well. And so we're able to make sure that we partner our preferred partners with the correct clients, because relationship is half the battle. You know, I may have a great accountant, but if they can't gel well with the client, it's just going to be a disaster. And so we take the time to make sure that we put the right people in the right rooms at the right time, and then usually we're able to, you know, come up with some great outcomes. And then team, I'll actually talk a little bit later in this PowerPoint about, you know, managing the team, because a lot of times that can be the hardest part, and it's not necessarily your internal team, it's working with the team of the client. We just had a client that we had to let go because of that, but I'll talk about that on a later slide. Project charters. Project charters are super important because without a project charter, it's a lot of he said, she said, and it's, you know, this is what we thought. These were the objectives that we laid out, and you're like, well, no, that's not, you know, what we outlined here. And then, so to prevent all of that, we always make sure we put some type of charter or memorandum of understanding, however the client wants to do it, we put something in place that everybody signs off on to say that, hey, this is what we're going to do. And what we do, even if we're working with a client across multiple projects, for each one, we sit down and map that out, put together that chart and say, well, for this project, this is what is included in this. This is what we agreed, that we're agreeing that we're going to do. This is what you're asking for. And then that saves a lot of time and trouble, because clients like to change their mind in the beginning of projects all the time. And you take the time and deliver something, and then it's, that's not exactly what I wanted. And so it just winds up costing you, the project planner more time, which then, can increase the overall cost of the project. And it's just a lane that you really don't want to go down. Again, and scope, that's definitely something that you want to make sure you spend time with on that charter, and really understanding the scope, because as I mentioned previously, the scope that a client may have in mind and what it actually takes to complete the project may be two different things. So really taking the time to discuss with them the scope of their project and let them understand what they're really asking you for, and outlining that. Sometimes you have to go in depth, because the client may not even understand their industry. It may just be a representative, for an organization. And the actual stakeholders who need the work may not be present. And so what I like to do is get the actual decision maker on the, in the room to say, hey, instead of us going back and forth, let's just talk about what you need and just get everything right out front. Then we can deal with your representative once, we've kind of put everything in place. And I thought this picture was great. This is what happens, right? The client says, oh, I wanted this. And then we deliver, you deliver, or this is actually what is needed, but they want this. As we talk about scope, this is kind of what was specified, and this is what was delivered. Like, this is a catastrophe all the way around, because there was no communication or no one signed off on the charter, or a charter was not in place. And so you wind up with these things, which winds up with, again, a project that's over budget or over timeline, you've utilized all the resources and all kind of nightmares that we try to stay away from. And, for me personally, I learned a lot of these things before undergrad, just being in the field, and you learn these things the hard way, right? And I make a lot of mental notes that we're not going to do this way again. So it's okay. And even now, we make mistakes all the time. You try to get the core things down, but when you go into different uncharted territory, such as what we're doing with this sovereign nation, we don't know. So I'm pretty sure we're going to make some missteps there, but that's just part of the game. As I was saying, stakeholders, understand who the stakeholders are, understand who you're communicating with and where they stand in relation to the stakeholders, right? Is their word the final word, or do they have to take it back to their team and get approval? Just knowing all of those things is super important. How their decision-making process goes is super important, because, they can tell you one thing and say, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And then they go back, you deliver the product, and you take it back. And then they say, oh, well, this is not what we wanted. It's because, what they signed off on was not in line with what their stakeholders actually wanted. So, the more often you can have actual decision makers in the room, the better outcome you usually can have by having direct communication with those individuals. Because you don't want to, as this illustration shows here, you don't want to paint yourself into a corner, right? And so you don't plan correctly. This happens way too often. I have a client who is in the apparel industry, and this individual is great with, it's more of a novelty boutique of fashion, I guess, to say it loosely. And so this individual comes up with these ideas, and then, she'll put together a marketing campaign, and then sometimes it's hit or miss, but when they hit, then it creates, she receives all of these orders, but then she's behind on orders. All right, so now she's in the corner. So she wanted, or so what I say is, not having enough orders can be just as bad as having too many orders if you can't fulfill. All right, so you definitely want to make sure that you're not painting yourself into the corner as the project manager. Make sure that you have a way out, or you have an exit. You definitely don't want this to happen, because it's not fun having to walk over all your hard work and then start all over again just to do some things that you could have done in the beginning. Proper planning prevents poor project performance. Taking the time to do this, and with a lot of new entrepreneurs, they don't want to take the time to plan. Like, that's the number one thing. And so when we talk about it, we say, hey, it's great, that this may have legs, but let's sit down and talk this through. Let's sit down and talk strategy. Let's sit down and talk project planning. and they just, you know, they just want to, well, we can do this and do this. I say, no, before we do anything, we have to plan this out to actually, so you can understand how this works, and you can make sure you have the resources to do this, and you can make sure you have the timeline and all of those things. So definitely always, you know, the more work, what they say, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, how do you have time to do it again? Right? In the planning stage, you know, schedule, resources, work breakdown structure, all that kind of culminates and funnels down into what your project plan is. So you as the project planner, you know, you have to always know what you have on your plate. You know, if you have the opportunity, and let me say that also, I'm in a unique position as, you know, being partner. I get to turn away and pick and choose what I want. It wasn't always that way. You know, if you're working in a different role, then, you know, you sometimes you kind of just have to take what comes down the pipe. But even then, just always make sure that you put yourself in a position where you can deliver quality work, and that you still do all of these same things here, and just understand this is kind of what's going to make your project plan. This is just kind of an example of building a house, right? And this is kind of what I give to my entrepreneurs, but I actually do it backwards. I tell them, I say, you want to build a business, first thing you got to do is find, you know, when I relate to building a house, I say, if you're going to build a house, you got to find the land. Then you got to check the soil, right? Make sure you can even build on that soil. And then you got to lay a foundation, and then you have to do all these other things. You can't just show up with shingles, right, to an empty lot and say, I have a house. It doesn't work that way. So, you know, with this illustration here, it's kind of the same thing. You know, you're going to build a house. That's the overall project plan. And then you just kind of break that down into smaller pieces. In some of the presentations I do, I have a picture of a pizza, and I tell my entrepreneurs or the clients, I say, hey, just imagine you were out, you know, running on the beach or working, you know, you had a good workout, and you say, I'm going to have my favorite pizza. And then it's, you know, a picture of a full pizza. And I say, regardless of how hungry you are, you still have to eat this slice by slice. So you have to break this down and eat it one slice at a time if you're going to get through this whole pizza. So it's the same thing with any project. You know, the scope, building a house is a huge project until you break it down to something like this. All right, well, there's a garden. So, you know, there's kind of a project plan for this garden, one for the building here. And so once we do all of these small things, then, you know, at the end of the day, we can go turn the key to that new house that we always wanted, which is the same with the project. You know, we break the project, you know, down into smaller pieces. It's more digestible. It's not as overwhelming, especially for the client, because, you know, they come in and they're already flustered, like, oh, I want to start this business, or I need to increase revenue. I need to do, you know, increase my marketing, but I don't know how. And so then we break it down into smaller pieces, smaller, more digestible pieces there. As you talk resources, think about all these things. These are just some loose categories, people, materials, and, you know, it's going to be an industry by industry thing. These are some of the categories, some of the attributes that go with that, you know, availability, cost, funding, all of those things. All of those things go hand in hand. So really take time to understand what resources they have, not what resources they think they have, because thinking about resources, and then when you go and say, hey, you know, you said you had this, we need this for this project plan, and then they can't get it, it just sets you back, all right? So it's better to really take time and kind of plan out all these things, and understand. I always tell our clients, once you tell us what resources that you have already, we can figure out what resources we need to go get for you. And this is before we actually get into the plan. Project finance is super important. You know, making sure that the plan meshes with the budget, all right? And, you know, no plan is perfect. You know, we know that. I'm pretty sure you guys know that now, going through class and just through, you know, what you've been through in life. You got to be flexible, but, you know, the closer you can stay into the ballpark of understanding what the cash flow and the operating expenses and all of these things are going to be, and how they affect your project plan, are super important. You know, making sure that they actually have the money to pay you, as a, you know, if you're independent at the time. Making sure that they more important than me, they have the resources to get their project off of the ground. That's super important. So just taking time, and this all comes with the pre-planning to ensure that that the client has everything that they need to make their project successful. You know, reflects well on you as a project manager. And risk management. This is one of the most important aspects of project planning. Making sure you take the time to assess risk that can be prevented. And a lot of times it's just as simple as having a conversation with the client. Once you kind of understand what the scope of that project is, you know, the cost and all these other things, resources, just having that, you know, conversation that says, hey, you know, this is kind of what our operation process is going to look like. You know, in this, you know, we see that when we've done projects, you know, similar to this, we notice this, and these things happen, and then just kind of sit down and work through those risks. It takes time. but it saves you a lot more time. And what I always tell my clients is if we sit down and do this now, it may be time consuming, but the more of these that we can mitigate now, when we're in the project, we can focus on those challenges and those fires that will arise, or they will arise every single time. And so now, instead of combating risk that we could have eliminated and putting out fires, we can, 90% of our attention can just be putting out those fires, and it helps the project to kind of stay on course and keep everything at the pace that we planned it for. Plans, these are just a couple quotes. I've always found that plans are useful, but planning is indispensable. With properly prepared plans, you can achieve great results. However, planning is necessary but not sufficient. I mean, things are going to change, but with no plan, if you have a plan, you at least have something to refer to and a guide, right? To show you, where you're going and what you planned out. And then, as changes come, you just kind of take the time to figure out, how do we now, mitigate this sink in the project and incorporate any changes that we need to make. And as you get into the execution phase, that's when you will actually notice a lot of your challenges while you're actually out there. If in this case, this guy's a bricklayer, like a measurement may be off. It doesn't mean it has to derail the whole project. It just means that it's a challenge. And if you've mitigated the majority of your risk already, it's not really a big deal. It's a small challenge that you work through. And you don't really have to get up in arms or anything like that, because you kind of plan for these things and a lot of time for those things. And I think that is my last slide on here. So I just wanted to touch base on some of those things and just kind of how I kind of think through some of the day-to-day things that we do. Going back to that team slide that I wanted to talk about. So we had a client whose internal communication was horrible. We signed on to do one project, and the company was maybe 5 employees, and they weren't communicating within their 5 employees. And so, we had a project in place, and then they would call 24 hours before and say, hey, we have this other project. We were wondering if you guys can help us out. They were a new client, so we don't sign any long-term contracts. We kind of always go month by month, so it gives us time to work with the client. If anything arises, we always have leeway to move around and renegotiate things as needed. And so with this client, we told them, we'll work with you guys for 90 days and just kind of see how it goes, and then just kind of negotiate it from there. And the communication was horrible. So when all of this, all the virtual graduations began to happen, they work in the realm of community colleges. So they had some colleges, a couple across the country, that were looking to do some virtual graduation stuff. And so one of the projects they asked us to do was a project. We had someone on our audio visual team put together a virtual graduation. And so they initially quoted us, I think it was supposed to be 1,200 students, and it wound up being like 2,500 students, right? Which was like quadruple the work and they wanted it all in like 48 hours. And so that was kind of one of the straws for us that kind of broke the camel's back, because we understood, that you're working with community colleges, there's students involved, you want to make sure they have a graduation and all these other things, but you can't have a bad communication like that. And then I guess what really put us over the top is when it came time for compensation, there was pushback. On that project. So from that, instead of us, going forward, the client was very lucrative to us, but I made the call we wanted to salvage the relationship. So because the client came from a referral from one of our other longtime clients, and so we just politely, just said, hey, we would love to work with you guys, but it's not really syncing up right now. So we're going to go ahead and step away, and we can refer you to some other individuals who may be able to help you. But the workflow that you guys have right now is not working. And sometimes you have to do that because that was kind of wearing on us and taking away time from other clients that we could have kind of been dealing with at that time. So that's that. Like I said, I just want to give a quick overview, but I'll be happy to answer some questions and all those good things. And I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, James.
Absolutely.
That was fantastic. That was great. I was taking some notes, and James went through a lot of the components that come up in the other courses that we have that are part of our project management degree. He touched on some things from our resource management class, that's OGL 324. He touched on a lot of things from the project risk management class, that's OGL 421. He touched on things from the project time management class, that's OGL 322. He touched on things from the project cost management class. That's OGL 323. So you did a fantastic, you like covered the whole
Yeah.
spectrum. That was fantastic. That was really
Thank you.
super great. There were some questions that came up in the chat.
Yeah.
That I want us to be able to come to. Kylie was asking, do you ever have to, and then she put it in quotes, sell a project plan? Do you ever have to sell a project plan?
Oh, I have to sell. Well, it usually depends on the client. If it's let's just talk. If we're talking entrepreneurs and new businesses, yes, because they don't know anything about planning or anything like that, and all they see it is as a something that's going to cost them money because they're going to have to pay us to do this, and they want to pay us to just jump in and start doing things, and it's like it doesn't work that way. But once we show them the benefit of the plan and say, by doing this, we're able to do this, and overall we'll save you, capital in the long run by doing this, and we'll also be able to more realistically hit your timelines or whatever timelines are established by taking the time to actually do this up front. Then they're usually a little bit more receptive of it, and it really usually once we kind of get into the plan and they understand, and so I have something I do is with the templates we use. I usually walk the client through the template, right? So I'll have the template and there's like a breakdown under each section, and we'll sit down and walk them through that. And usually once we get through about the first or second page, they understand. And then, so let's say we have a few clients that are in their 70s that we work with, right? And so giving them a 15-page project plan is not going to work. And so in that case, we break it down and we'll go to like a 2-page or a 3-page project plan. It's a lot more simple. We'll do the other work on the outside, but we just want to convey that the planning is super important. And instead of us handing you a 15-page, what they'll think is a booklet, we give them 3 pages and we kind of walk them through that. So yeah, selling the selling for me is more on the educational piece of it, because as we educate them why it's important, it's, once we do this here and you understand as a client how to do this, you can duplicate this because you will have to in your business and everything that you do. So absolutely.
Thank you. So you modify your pitch depending on your client.
Oh yeah, client, industry, personality, all of those things, most definitely.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then you also had a question, Kylie, right? You were asking about
Yes.
to work in a specific field such as IT as a project manager, does the person need to have IT field experience? And I think it depends. I think that's pretty common. It's common that you'll see project managers who have some background in accomplishing some of the tasks that come up on the projects that they manage. Like I'm trying to think if the videos we have in this class, or it's my project procurement class. There's some videos I have where I'm talking with a project manager at ASU, and that person is a construction project manager. And so that person has very different project management experience than because the construction projects I managed IT projects, and this person manages construction projects. And so there's a lot of differences and a lot of similarities between those projects, but that person has some kinds of construction management experience before they got into project management. And I wasn't a programmer, but I had like database design experience before I went into project management. So even though I couldn't program myself, I could talk to programmers. I could talk to my database designers. I could talk to all the networking specialists and all the individuals who would be on a project team that I was managing. So I think instead of maybe having the experience, you have to have some qualifications. You have to have some knowledge about that field so that you can communicate effectively with individuals, because they'll start using acronyms, or whatever they're discussing will be based on some assumptions about how, like if we're using an Oracle database, that's a relational database. There's and then we're discussing something else about it. Like a person needs to know there are some givens that come with the technology that you're using. and the technology is going to be specific to the kind of project it is. So if it's a healthcare project, that would be quite different than an IT project. And that would be different than a telecommunications project. And then we mentioned construction project, or if it was a, you know, like a project in the, like the artistic field, right? If the products that were being produced were media content, right? That would be very different too. And so having the knowledge about that field adds to the project manager's capacity to develop trust with their clients. That's where it comes in.
Thank you.
And then Amy had a question about scope. So what about scope did you want to ask about, Amy?
Just what it is in general.
Oh, okay. So scope is like, think of like physical property and having a great big wall around it. Nothing in, nothing out. That wall is your scope. The word scope, what that means in projects is that sets the boundary around what is going to be considered in the project or outside the project. So that's what that word scope means. So if you were to take on a project for your client to do X, Y, and Z, you would want to establish what the scope of that project was so that both you and your client were crystal clear about what was inside and what was beyond the scope of the project, right? You'd want to know where those boundaries are. Like where does your responsibility to do things for the client and produce things, where does that stop? Where does you wouldn't want it to just keep going forever and ever and never know where the end point is, right? So that's what scope means.
Okay.
Excellent. Great question. There was a couple other things that James brought up that I thought were really wise reflections of things that we've covered in the class. And for example, one of them that he brought up several times is the importance of being able to say no, being comfortable saying that, not feeling like that the goal is just to agree to anything and everything. No, having enough confidence and trust in oneself and one's capacity to take on things, and knowing when it's not going to be a good fit. And sometimes it's just not a good fit, you know, that it's just a better fit for that client to seek out a different project manager to manage that project. That kind of thing happens.
And don't take that personal. Sometimes it's, you know, yeah, it's just what it is sometimes in business. Yep. You know, it's not always every key can't fit in every hole every time. Exactly.
That is exactly true. Let's see, I had some other notes. Oh, I liked it when James brought up the idea that clients' desires for their projects are much bigger than they realize, and they think what they have in mind is you know, pretty small, and they don't realize all the many things that have to be done in order to accomplish whatever it is that they're asking. That is super common, no matter what kind of project it is. That happens all the time.
Absolutely.
Clients just don't realize all the work that's involved. And in a sort of funny, sort of paradoxical way, they do actually realize that it's that much work, because this is why projects have come to be, right? And why project managers are necessary, and why project management techniques and practices and standards, and why there's a project management degree, and why there's a project management institute, right? That's why it exists, is because projects do contain a lot more work than people realize. So
I definitely agree there. I would also add, just, you know, if you're going into project management, build your network of experts. I'm not an expert in every field, but I know a lot of experts in a lot of different fields. And so I make those phone calls and say, hey, we have a client that's requesting this. This is what they're saying. You know, what do you think about this? And then that helps me to be able to make decisions. And then if needed, I'll bring that person in. We just had a gentleman who needed some public relations. So I know enough about marketing to understand, you know, the needs on the surface level, but when the details of how to execute it, that's not my forte. So I bring in our PR specialist. So just, you know, have as many experts that in various fields, and not just in your field, and outside of your field as well. And, you know, it makes you that much stronger as a leader.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one thing, I love the way you said that, because that's one thing in all of our organizational leadership courses, that's a concept that gets repeated in a lot of the different courses, is that leadership is not about being the person that knows the most in the room. Because if that were the case, that would drastically limit what a group of people can do, right? If it's just limited to, if you were to just randomly select any individual in the room, like even consider our virtual room right now, if we were to randomly select one of the individuals, even if you selected me and say, oh, it's Dr. Chandler, she must be the leader because she's got doctor in front of her name, right? She must know the most. That's not true. That's simply not true. It's not true about me. It's not true about anybody, no matter what their title is, no matter what their salary is, that the individual, there's no one individual that possesses all of the great ideas or all of the good information that is necessary to accomplish whatever the group is trying to accomplish. And so accepting that and recognizing that and working within that is a really key leadership skill, to be able to appreciate and welcome and also reciprocate with one's network. And I have these skills, you have those skills. Let's work together. How can I help out your projects? How can you help out my projects? Absolutely. Another thing I loved on James's slide about the requirements, and it was it had requirements gathering, and then the word gathering was crossed out and elicitation was in there instead. I love that, because the phrase requirements gathering has always boggled my mind, because it makes it seem as if these requirements are just lying on the ground and you get to just saunter through with your basket and then just pick them all up. Oh, there they are. I can just pick up all the requirements. There they are, ready to be gathered, right? Because that's not what requirements elicitation is about. Sometimes it's requirements trying to drag them out of your clients, right? Like trying to get them to explain, describe, draw, right? Like what is it that you actually want created can be really challenging to drag that out of the clients and the stakeholders and the other individuals who are involved with the project. That can be really challenging. So I loved that. I thought that was really key. And then
like a stakeholder, what their like boss is looking for. So to be like, I understand kind of what you want, but like, what is that exactly is your boss wanting from you as well?
Yes, yes, because there can be just plain confusion or lack of information between the person who's saying, yes, we're going to do this project, and then somebody within that organization gets assigned to be the representative, and they show up and they're like, I don't know, they just told me to come to this meeting, right? Like I don't really know what they're doing, and a lot of times people don't say that. People get embarrassed. It's really easy to get embarrassed in a work situation. People think they have to show up everywhere knowing a lot and never say, yeah, I don't know. I just don't know. I have no idea. Some people are reluctant to say that. And so they'll say something that they think might be close to right. So then you're hearing this from these people, but you heard that from and the thing, it doesn't go together. And you're like, well, what is it that these people really want?
Yeah.
Or there can be plain conflict. There can, like, I think James was referring to somewhere, it's like individuals within the organization don't agree. And they're they're kind of using the project as the thing to, they're kind of having like a tug of war through the project, right? Like, no, let's do it this way. No, I want to do it this way. No, let's do it this way. And it's almost as if they're both trying to manipulate the project to make it turn out the way they had in mind, instead of, you know, discussing that and getting that worked out ahead of time. They're trying to do that while the project is going on. And that's a big risk area too.
That's huge.
James referred to a lot of different risks, and he referred to how he can recognize what those risks are in the conversations with the client. That, you know, the client is asking for things out of sequence, or asking for things too soon, or trying to take on too much. That these things, James is already identifying them really early on in the very initial conversations about a possible project. He's identifying those as possible risks that could impact the project. And that's really key too. Let me check our time. Oh, we're good on time. And then there was the slide about the proper prior planning prevents, no, what was it? Proper prior planning, or all the P's.
Proper project planning. I'll get the exact same for you.
Produces perfect, no, that wasn't it.
Proper planning prevents poor project performance.
There it is. And I think that that idea of planning, I always see some students in this class that experience the planning as really tedious and incredibly boring. And I will grant you that. I'm not going to argue, and I'm not going to try to convince any student that planning actually is inherently exciting or thrilling. I'm not going to argue that. But I will argue that the amount of time that the student in this class invests in the planning aspect, or a project manager invests in the planning part of the project, that there are the dividends, the benefits from investing the time in the planning aspect are more than 1-to-1. So for every hour that you invest in planning, you get more than an hour benefit out of it while the project is going on. And sometimes it's double, sometimes it's triple. It could be even more than that. And the idea is that from a planning perspective, it's kind of like, and James alluded to this, it's kind of like you're walking around with that entire project plan for the project. The entire thing is like a living thing inside your head all the time. And that the way this OGL 320 class is structured is to encourage students to do that with the course. It's to encourage students at the very beginning to dig into everything they're going to do in the course very early in the course. You don't leave it until 2 days before something is due, before you even look at what the deliverable is, what the product is. That's not the time to start looking at what the requirements are. All of the requirements for all of the products should have been reviewed very early on. They should have been reviewed when the students were creating their initial project plans. And then when you create your updated and improved project plans, that should be a very easy step, because all you're doing is updating things. Some students are going to have a more challenging task to update and improve their project plans, because they didn't hit all of the quality criteria the first time around. But that idea of having the entire project plan live inside your head, that is a key thing that's the life of a project manager. And James was making references to how he's got that going on for all of his projects. So he's got to be able to jump from this project to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. And so those project plans can't be just loosey-goosey, you know, like a little, you know, 3-bullet to-do list, right? He was referring to project plans that are 15 pages long. And so he doesn't have all those elements memorized, but he has enough of it in his head so that he can, you know, switch from dealing with this client and these issues to dealing with a different client and their issues by quickly accessing his up-to-date project plan for that particular client.
And it also provides a roadmap, because sometimes I get pulled away, so I may be heading up a project, but I have to go somewhere else, and then I can pass it along to another partner or whoever it may be, and say, hey, this is where we are, and then they have steps that they can work off of until I can get back to it. So that's important. So having it in your head is great, but if you get pulled away, if you get sick, if you go down, whatever it is, you've just now impacted the project, right? And your client doesn't care about it. They have a budget that they put up. You said that you were going to deliver. It needs to be delivered.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. So do we have questions from Tori? Do you have any questions that you wanted to, or comments or observations?
No, just kind of listening in, and what said that there's multiple projects that come in all at the same time, or probably within weeks or months of one another. So you've got to be able to manage multiple projects, being a project manager, and have to have that insight as to what's going on, and not necessarily focusing at company XYZ, that you are that project manager for instances like with the videos, with the help desk or the library, where you're working for Arizona State and you're the project manager on this, where he's, you know, project management at a consulting firm that does across boards and spectrums and everything.
Right. Yes. Yes. I'm glad you brought that up, because depending on the size of the projects, some project managers in some organizations are managing, they could be managing 10, 15 smallish projects and they're responsible for managing all of those. And they're all kind of small, but even though they're small, they still have risks that have to be managed on them. They still have resources. They still have cost management. They still have time management that relates to them. They still have quality management that relates to them. And so being able to move from one to one, it is really key. And a lot of organizations that are set up that way, where they have internal project managers who do manage that many projects, those organizations are typically using consistent project management practices across all of those projects. And those clients would, in the scenario that I'm describing as an example, all of their clients would be internal clients. And so that is a situation that can be very different from the situation that James is in, where all of his clients are external to his organization. And so there could be, in that kind of situation, there could be a certain degree of customization. Like he mentioned, you know, some of his clients, he's not giving them the complete project plan. He's reducing the level of complexity of the project plan to make it easier for the clients to follow along what's going on. So there's some customization with the project planning steps that he's engaging in to meet his clients' needs. Yep.
Yeah.
And Arvevia, did you want to ask any questions or make any points? You're muted right now. Oh, I hope we didn't lose you. Oh no. We were chatting at the very beginning when she first joined the session. I hope we didn't lose her. Maybe she just stepped away. I do that sometimes, and I'm always certain that if I step away from my computer and I have it on mute, that's when somebody in the session I'm in is they're gonna start asking me something. They're gonna be like, Jennifer, well, what do you think about that? And I'm not there. But that's just the nature of the communications arrangements we're in. Oh, here, Kylie was asking, how many projects do you have at the same time, James?
How many do I have at the same time? Well, let's see. Right now, well, So I guess so with me being senior partner, I've kind of touched everything that comes through the door because I work with the leadership at the other organization. I kind of work on the business development on when a referral is sent our way, making that initial contact, and we sit down and working through that portion of it all the way through closing the deal. And then once I close the deal, once it's passed off, I always keep my finger on all of the projects that come through to understand where we are in case something does happen. And, I'm always instrumental in the project planning and the strategy and all of those issues or all of those processes there. So I think currently I probably have my fingerprint on about probably 8, I think right now, about 8 different projects that are all in different stages. I would say there are 3 that are more towards the beginning. We're still in strategic and project planning. And then there's probably about 3 or 4 that are in execution, various points of execution. A couple just started, some are about midway, and some are nearing that completion. And then there are maybe 1 or 2 that are kind of just in, I'll say it loosely, cruise control, because we've kind of been working and have a great rapport. And so the client has enough information now and enough education on the importance of the project planning and how to execute and all those things that we just kind of have refresher meetings, maybe once or twice a month, or they'll call when they need something at this point. So that's kind of where we are now. And that's in COVID. Before COVID, we probably had about, and like I said, I personally have my fingers probably on about 14 to 15 different projects at that time. So, but again, every my involvement in each one is different. So it's not that I'm the main project manager for each one, but I do kind of steer the ship on the majority of those to make sure that everything is going the way it is. Because it's easy for a project to get derailed, if it's neglected. I always say, your project is like your business, it's like a child. If you don't nourish it, it will go astray and go awry and all those things. So it's the same thing with projects. And, I learned that through experience. And it's okay, it happens from time to time, but it's just about, for me, the closer I can stay and the more on top of the project I can stay, I feel more comfortable as we go through the execution of the project. Because, I'm not one of those partners that, I jump in and then, all right, here you go. And then I jump back in like 6 weeks later, like, oh, well, how did all this stuff get here? It's like, I'm always checking in, at least once a week, if more, especially in the infancy stages of it a little bit more, but just always trying to make sure that everything is where it needs to be. And teamwork and communication is one of the biggest issues that can derail a project because let's say for us, we may have several partners who are all independent, maybe say a PR person, and then we have this person over here, and then they come together and they work on the team where there's different personalities, there's different working styles. So I'm a huge relationship person. So even if I'm doing nothing more but just trying to, tap in on those relationships and making sure that the communication and there's no misunderstandings happening. I'm very good at being able to smooth over challenges and issues because usually it's just a miscommunication. Between 2 parties, and just, as long as I'm involved in it, when I've stepped away, those things can happen if I step away for too long a period of time, because again, everybody's initiative and motivation is different on the project, outside of us balancing the projects at the firm, our partners are balancing their projects, the clients are balancing their projects. And so I try to be that center core of peace and reasoning to keep more so the glue of the project is kind of where, even though I'm not always actively involved, I try to make sure I lead from the center. So that way everything is kind of passing through me. Even if I don't, necessarily have to okay everything, I need to know everything that's happening because you just never know, what's going to happen with the project. And I'd rather come in a project, knowing 75 to 80% of what's been going on than to jump in and I only know 20% of what's been going on. Makes it that much more difficult to kind of resolve the whatever the issue may be.
Absolutely. Well, and that gets us right exactly to our time. I couldn't have worked out more perfectly. I want to thank everybody for making the time for this today. I really appreciate that. And everybody stay safe and healthy, okay?
Absolutely.
And if there aren't any last questions, then you can always send them through email. If you email me, if you're trying to get a hold of James, I can always pass it on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Any questions you guys have? I mean, that's, going in this semester in the future, if you in project management, and then I don't know where, I know everybody's located in different places, but yeah, email. I'm definitely always willing to lend some advice.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
All
Everybody have
right.
a good day.
Bye-bye, everybody.